everybody, so I'm going to show you a quick demo on how to kind of set up for the paper cut collage, as well as a couple professional practices when it comes to using an X-Acto blade to cut out very, very small shapes, right? Because the main thing is that you want to be safe and you want to make sure that all of your supplies are kind of up to par, right? So I have my original design, right? You guys saw that image also posted to Canvas. So there's a couple ways you can do this. I could have glued this onto a piece of black construction paper and cut out the whole thing, right? And so essentially what I'm doing is working against that black and white contrast again, cutting out the white parts of the paper. So then what's left is the black parts of the paper. So when you layer it on top of one of your collage pieces of your Bristol board, you kind of still have this image, right? And it just, you obviously could draw this in Sharpie and have a very similar result, but there's something nice about the layered effect of paper cut collages that could be something that you're interested in, right? So what I've done is I've just essentially redrawn this in graphite. And so basically what I've tried to do, apart from the bricks, I wanted to change that a little bit from my original design. The silver parts are what we're going to try to take out, right? And so something else you can do is that if you don't have black construction paper on hand, and this is why I wanted to do the demo with this one, is that you can take a extra piece of, Bristol board or even your sketchbook paper and paint it black, right? Most of you should have black paint. And so this is something that's quick and easy, and in all honesty, I kind of like the way this looks a little better, right? This is a little old construction paper, but you can see that it's a little faded. I think the black paint kind of looks a little nicer, right? So a couple things, you're gonna see me cut in a time lapse, right? So I'm gonna kind of put that aside for a second. But I am going to do a little demo on some safety practices, right? So most of you should have this X-Acto blade in your kit. You guys can see that my tip is broken. I'm very heavy-handed, right? And so when I push down a lot with more pressure than I need to, I usually tend to break off the tips. But this is the one that I use to, cut cardboard, shape my pencils down. And so just with light pressure, you can see that it kind of went all the way through, but that's all the pressure it should take. Now this blade is a little dull. I'm gonna kind of show you on something that's a little bit heavier, just the same amount of pressure. It doesn't quite go all the way through, right? And so if you have a dull blade, you're gonna be working a little bit harder. And when you're cutting into a design that's really detailed like this one is, you want a really sharp blade, right? So I'm gonna switch out my blade just to kind of show you guys. But with the dull one, what you don't wanna do, making sure my hands can be seen, this is the holding hand of the paper, right? And something that I do like to have, these are both kind of free from any kind of book or binding or sketchbook, because I want to have the option to kind of rotate and cut the direction that I want. And so it's really going to be hard to cut away from yourself, right? And so what you kind of want to do, I know when you're opening boxes, you're always supposed to cut away from yourself. But with paper cut, you just don't want to cut into your holding hand, right? So I don't ever want to see anyone do this. Not that I can see you guys do this, but I can steady this with my other hand. I'm going to cut away from my body, right? I'm kind of lined up right behind this. And so you can kind of cut curves. And notice I'm not just going really fast, right? That's going to be a very quick way to kind of get hurt, get some nicks on your fingers. And especially if your blade is new, it's going to be really sharp. And so, rotate the paper if you're nervous and not the blade, right? And so, I get the same kind of curve, just rotating the paper. So it's one of those things, it's work a little smarter and not harder. If you're just doing something really small, take the time, kind of rotate your paper. And it does help to kind of go beyond the corners. You can see I cut a small triangle there. And again, this is the dull blade. So, you don't want to necessarily have those little extra gaps when you're trying to rip this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my blade. Most X-Acto blades either come with a blade in them or you have to reassemble it. This is the one I have. There's lots of different kinds, so you should just be able to twist, pop it loose, and it slides right out. usually, and this is probably also why the tips get broken, when I store it closed like this because I lost the cap to mine a long time ago. But kind of flipping the blade inside out, this is still a sharp edge, but it's a little safer. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what a new blade's going to look like. These, I think, come in packs of 5. You can see I have 2 left in here. But an X-Acto blade, if you buy it in a pack, it usually comes with extra blades. So you don't necessarily have to go and purchase other ones. I'm going to switch that out because that blade looks broken as well. I have a tendency to put used blades back in this thing, so. All right, sharp X-Acto blade, gonna pop it right in, slide it, and now it's good to go. See how fine this tip is? I should just be able to apply the lightest pressure. Like if this is a lot of pressure, you guys can see me kind of divot my hand. You're really just kind of gliding it across, right? That's how sharp your blade should be. So just a little bit of pressure. You guys can see the difference, right? That cut beautifully. Took no effort. So you don't need like brute force to kind of cut out your paper. I know a lot of people think that when they're cutting, but if you have a sharp blade, you should just be able to cut and poke out. You see that just fell right out. That's the difference of having a really sharp blade and one that's had a lot more use, right? So I'm just gonna kind of go into this. Now that was on the paper. This is a little bit thicker than my construction paper. So, maybe a little bit more pressure, but I'm just gonna go for this shape up at the top that I know is all silver. So I'm gonna get a little closer because it's harder for me to see. Gently go along those lines. And it's one of those things, you can cut against a ruler if you really want to. I don't really, part of this design, at least for this one, yes, it has a lot of perspective in it, but it is also very organic and it's really loose and sketchy, so I don't have to have it be perfect, right? And so the whole thing about paper cut is that you want that contrast. Looking at this original design, this is the part I'm working on cutting out. And so you want the black to remain. Now, all of my black I'm going to try to keep connected, so it's just kind of one piece. You don't have to do that for your collage. Like for this guy, if I wanted all white to be around him, he's not connected to anything, so obviously it's going to be a free piece. But that's something you can easily collage into place, right? So you don't have to keep it all connected when you're doing your design, unless you really want to. I'm gonna kind of give it a wiggle here. I'm gonna come down. And notice I keep rotating my paper. That's gonna help a lot, right? Because I just wanna keep pulling back to me. Anytime you're getting into like this kind of motion where you're starting to go up, most people just don't have that dexterity and that control. This is not a normal or practiced motion, I should say. This is not something we typically do when we're drawing. So, always trying to rotate that paper to kind of work for you. It's upside down, right? It's because I'm working in this direction. Gonna kind of give it a wiggle and a squiggle here as well. And again, I'm using hardly any pressure. I'm just kind of dragging it along. There is no, first prize for being done with this one. If you finish really quickly, you're just gonna want it to be nice and smooth. And you see that it didn't quite cut through all the way. So instead of ripping it, I'm just gonna kind of work back in, and now I have that empty space, right? And so this is the painted version, right? So you guys can see I have that like little edge, and so when I put it on that white paper eventually, it's gonna have that contrast that you're looking for. Quick and easy, right? So I'm gonna finish the rest of this in a time lapse. Now again, something else that's important, you guys can see that I have a very large cutting mat. I'm a printmaker, so this is just something I have in my studio. If you don't have a fancy cutting mat, it's not the end of the world. Any kind of scrap cardboard, any kind of thicker paper. Not saying this is something you should do, but in the event that you don't have anything else, like a scrap piece of cardboard, any kind of drink beverage, the back of a sketchbook works well. You're gonna get those ridges in. Nothing you can't like put some tape on, collage a little something over. But this will work in a pinch, right? It's just so you don't damage the table. So don't do this on any kind of linoleum floor, any kind of table, countertop. You definitely want something between your table and your cutting paper surface, right? And it also, something like this, you guys can see that my cutting board's not very thick, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. piece of cardboard will just give you that extra bit, and you can kind of tell the difference if you kind of poke through and you hear that extra like of a cardboard, you know that you have just enough depth. But something like this, you guys can see it takes like no effort. I am using no pressure to cut this, and that's that different of that sharp blade, okay? So, as you're working, if you start to like really struggle to cut out your shapes and you have that extra blade, switch it out. It makes all the difference in this paper cut project. So hopefully that was helpful, and good luck.